2, 1.
Hello, viewer, and welcome to Spotlight here on Hope TV, where you look and live. And on Spotlight, we are always doing our very best to bring to you our perspectives that are helpful, especially for us as a church, as Christians, as we process different things that are happening in our world. And one of the things that's happening in our world right now is the situation in Israel. And for us as Kenyans, one of the things that we really hope to do as Christians is to make a trip to Israel. Many of us have been to Israel because Israel is a place where our faith is built. Because when you walk that country and see exactly where Jesus walked, then there's something about our faith that is ignited by just the visit to Israel. And even in the recent months, recent weeks, we've had some people who had planned to go to Israel, but now can't. Why? Because there has been an attack coming from the Hamas, and that has really made the situation very tensive. And to engage on the questions around the situation in Israel, we are so honored to have with us His Excellency Michael Lawton, who is the Israel ambassador to Kenya, and he is willing to engage the questions that we have and shed light on true information coming from his understanding, his experience, his office, and I'm sure this program will be very helpful to us to just give us perspective. Again, as always, you're always welcome to engage us on social media and also on the WhatsApp line that's provided there. Be part of this conversation here as we ask ourselves, what's exactly going on in Israel? And Ambassador, Your Excellency, just welcome.
Good evening. Thank you very much for hosting. Thank you for hosting.
Yeah. How long have you been in Kenya, Ambassador Michael?
A bit less than 2 years. Late December 21.
Okay. Yeah. And so far, how is... I know you've been to many other places in the world, serving your country. How is your experience so far?
I got to paradise before the time came, you see. I was awarded.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's good to hear that. Yeah. So you're welcome to this program on Spotlight. A very heavy discussion ahead of us. And I think it's just right for us to begin with the question. You can tell us exactly what happened on 7th of October, 2023.
7th of October was a Shabbat, Saturday, Shabbat. The last day of Sukkot, holiday of Tabernacle. So 6:30 in the morning, people were either in bed or on the way to the synagogue or already in the synagogue praying. And some in rural areas probably were those who must be walking with the farms did, but usually, on Shabbat holiday we don't. And around the Gaza Strip, in the southern part of Israel, we will see later the location itself, there are Gaza Strip, which is ruled by the Hamas, Islamic terrorist organization, infiltrated, broke into the Israeli territory, approximately 2,000 armed terrorists, and attacked in a very well-planned attack in 20 different locations, all of them civilians, so 99% of them civilians. It took hours till we understood what is happening, and this is why, because half an hour before they launched their attack, before they ran in or walked in, because the distance sometimes the nearest is 3 meters, 500 meters from the fence, very near. There was a rain of rockets from Gaza onto the southern and part of Israel and the center. And to give you the proportion, Israel's size is a bit less than Kajiado County. And in a very short time, in a few hours, almost 3,000 rockets fell on Israel, on a part of Israel, so not on the whole territory. At the beginning, everybody was certain that it's another round of violence where we take rockets. We took 20,000 rockets. Since we left Gaza in 2005, 20,000 rockets were launched at Israel. So people were assuming it's another round. But then we started getting on the WhatsApp images from terrorists in different locations, including small towns. And slowly we built the picture. Even by the evening, we did not know what are the consequences. We realized there was a major attack. Now we know that roughly 2,000 terrorists, Hamas terrorists, broke into the civilian towns, kibbutzim, the collective farms, murdered, mutilated, burnt, hijacked, shot anybody, everybody whom they saw. We count more than 1,400 murdered Israelis, not only Israelis, because there were also foreign workers there from Nepal, Thailand, Philippines. There are two students from Tanzania who are, as far as we can tell, were hijacked by the Hamas. Those who were on the 11 months program, many Kenyans go to this program. No Kenyan was hurt. We still are not able to identify, even with the most sophisticated DNA testing, we cannot identify 280 remains. These are not bodies, but these are remains. Rockets kept on being launched at Israel. So far in the 2.5 weeks, about 7,000 of them. And 220 Israelis were kidnapped by Hamas to Gaza. Give you an idea about the enemy or the bravery of the Hamas terrorists. Kidnapping a sweet child like this one. He was seen also on TV together with his 9-month-old brother and their mother, and they were hijacked. They are now in Gaza. So that was the end of the 7th of October.
It was definitely a disastrous situation. What did it make you feel?
It was and still is traumatic. Personally, I am very careful, and I am quite reluctant when people use the word Holocaust. 6 million Jews were burnt, killed, murdered during the Second World War by the German Nazis. And that was the Holocaust. So anything else, we try to avoid using the word. And then we always explain it was not the magnitude. Magnitude was, of course, tremendous, 6 million people. But it's the cruelty, the hatred, the fact that they come to you not because of territory, not because of if you convert then it's okay, for just being who you are. And this is where we began using the word again, not because of the scale, and 1,400 people or more is the equivalent is, I think it was Secretary of State Blinken who said that the magnitude is the comparison is 55,000 people in September 11. It's the biggest terrorist attack with such consequences of 220 hijacked people. It never happened before. So it's outrage. It's the losing of, you know, for some moments you lose faith in humanity, not in all humanity, because you, the viewers, may believe that there are things we don't do. 50 years ago, in 1973, Israel was attacked by Syria and Egypt, army to army. Very bad surprise, very painful, but there were soldiers fighting, not 4 years old
Civilians,
children. And the description, I will not show it, of course, on camera. I just heard today the head of the Forensic Institute in Israel, he was given a bag with remains. He was sure there's the remains of a person. There were 5 people inside. Father and son that took more than 2.5 weeks to identify the remains, but what they saw in the CT scan is their spine and the metal wire around them. So they were tied before and burned alive. So it's beyond the words.
Yeah, and I think that outrage and anger would just be the right reactions to such an attack on what seemingly was an innocent gathering of people. And most of the Kenyans, we know Israel. You've just described to us that it's the size of Kajiado, and maybe some of us thought it was way bigger than that. But when we hear terms like Gaza Strip, we hear West Bank, we hear Jewish settlements, you know, things that we pick up from media reports. Just before you go, further into this conversation, maybe you can put for us in perspective Gaza and maybe West Bank, and I mean those, so that the viewer can know exactly what those areas are.
I'll try to do it in a couple of minutes, without a long lecture.
Yeah, because I think that once we know Gaza in a small way, we will get to know what the rockets meant and where they are coming from,
and also you will be able to judge what I'm saying, because I invite every viewer not to believe me because I'm biased, to read, to go and see documents, not to go to another ambassador or another spokesperson, or there's plenty of raw material. So that's the best way. I believe in details. So I will try to show and to explain, as I said, very briefly. Yeah. If this is Israel. This part of the map is the West Bank. Why the West Bank? Because Jordan on the eastern side, so the east bank of River Jordan. So that's the West Bank of the river Jordan and the East Bank. West Bank was under Jordanian control until the war of 1967, when Jordan, Syria, Egypt, Iraq attacked Israel. We managed to win the war and win territory, and we took over the West Bank. And we took control also of Gaza Strip, this very small area here on the border with Egypt, the Sinai Desert. This big part in Israel which you see is also a desert, but there's a desert, not like I know in Kenya, if you have 400 millimeters of rain, you call it semi-arid. and this is sand.
Mm, mm,
So many years of conflict between us and the Palestinians. There are about 3 million Palestinians in the West Bank, about 2.5 in Gaza Strip. And in 1993, Israel, then Prime Minister Rabin, who was the commander-in-chief during the Six-Day War in 1967, recognized the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, as the representative of Palestinian people. A year later, they signed accords, and what followed is the Palestinian Authority, Palestinian PLO, which converted into a Palestinian Authority, took control of Gaza, the towns and cities, not the whole strip, but the towns and cities, the refugee camps. Again, we're talking about May 1994, 1994. And all cities and towns which are populated by Arabs in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. Still, there are approximately up to 300,000 Jews living in this area in settlements, in rural settlements or small towns. Now, in 2005, as you can see, there's a geographical separation between Gaza and the West Bank. Actually, if you go to Mr. Google, you will see it's approximately 100 kilometers apart. And there was always rivalry between them, because Gaza was under Egyptian rule until 1967. And you should ask yourself why on earth they did not establish a state then. Why didn't they establish a state in the West Bank before 1967? They were with Arabs country, not with Israelis, not under Israeli so-called occupation. So anyway, in 2005, the then Prime Minister Sharon, general in his past, but again, you know, our generals, one thing is very characteristics of them, they come to the point where they say, I had enough of it. It's the heads of the internal security services. Once they leave, they become doves and left-wing parties. Anyway, so in 2005, we withdrew from the whole of the Gaza Strip. So there are no Israelis. We uprooted settlements. No Israelis in Gaza Strip. 2 years later, the Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip, formed the Palestinian Authority. To control, hundreds of Palestinians were killed by the Hamas, Palestinians affiliated with the Palestinian Authority. There's the famous images of those who were thrown from rooftops. And today, for the last almost 20 years, we are sometimes in dialogue, sometimes in conflict with the Palestinian Authority, which rules the West Bank. The West Bank leaders cannot enter Gaza. Maybe they can, but it will be a one-way ticket for them, because there's animosity and rivalry between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. So this is the geography, but you must be asking yourself if this Lotem is right, so why on earth the Hamas talks about occupation? So I will read to you from the Hamas Covenant, 1988.
So this is now the philosophy of Hamas.
Yeah, that's the charter of the Hamas, written and published on 18 August.
Yeah, just for the sake of clarity,
Yes.
before you tell us about the philosophy of the Hamas, maybe you can clarify for us the distinction between the Palestinian Liberation, the PLO, and the Hamas. What's the distinction between the two?
Secular. PLO was a secular movement, national movement. Hamas is a ultra-extreme religious terrorist organization, which goes back to the Muslim Brotherhood, which was born in Egypt 100 years ago. Again, nobody should listen to me, should go and read what they write about themselves and their origin. They claim to be universal Muslim fundamentalist organization. So they are religious.
Okay. So the PLO secular, the Hamas is, as you say, ultra religious.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, Ambassador, because there has been a lot of demonstrations around the world, actually, of people who are supporting the Palestinians. They are actually anti, especially the response of Israel. And they're talking about Israel also responding out of proportion. And they are also equally angered, equally furious because of the response of Israel. And these are in big cities, you talk about London, talk about cities in America. I mean, what do you make of this?
There are different issues here. There's the Palestinian-Israeli story, the West Bank, the future of, the two-state solution, which people claim. And on this, the answer is, that's one issue. And then there is the Hamas terrorist attack on civilians. It goes beyond my understanding, my logic, why supporters of a two-state solution, supporters of the Palestinian Authority, even Abu Mazen, the president of the Palestinian Authority himself, why on earth would they want to be identified, I don't want to show the pictures, with cremating human beings? Forget about Jews or not Jews. Why should they want, what motivates them to identify with an organization that decapitates babies? Is there an explanation, an excuse to it? In the name of what you come and decapitate babies? So many don't know the basic. For many you say Gaza, Palestinians, Hamas, it's all one big thing. And I'm not sure that if I ask Israelis about some specific locations or in a conflict, in any conflict in Africa, in the Balkan, which is not too far from us, or in any other place, they will know the subtle between this and that. So for them, it's a big issue. The Palestinians, and I think that they go wrong by doing it, they support this mixture. But by this, they identify with themselves with murderers. And again, luckily, I cannot understand them because, luckily, that's not my logic.
And when you're still at it, Israel has responded to the Hamas attack. And one of the criticisms is that the proportion of response has also been children have died as well, and innocent people have died as well, coming out of the Israel's response. How do you process that?
There's no proportionality in war. I can go back and give you examples in the history of wars. It's not a body count. That does not, even international law or the law of war doesn't speak about proportionality in this sense. So there was this English gentleman that was asking, so what do you expect Israelis to go and rape women in Gaza? To go and decapitate babies in Gaza? To go and burn people in Gaza? Will this be proportionate? I don't go there. Proportionality means that there should be relations proportions between the military gain and the civilian risk. And the law of war compels us, and we abide by it, that one, you hit military targets, and you're allowed, and again I invite the viewers to go and read the law, you're allowed to hit civilian targets which are used by military, by the combatants. If you look at the buildings, at the areas where we bomb, yes, you will see devastation. But then you should ask yourself, one, what was underneath? And if you don't know what was inside, you cannot talk about proportionality or about legal or illegal. And I can tell you that every pilot that takes off has a target. And he's not told, you go there and you drop your bombs. These are guided, sophisticated missiles, bombs that hit a specific apartment or a specific building. So one thing you should ask, and everybody should ask themselves before judging, do we know what was in that building? And the answer would be, obviously, not. And then why the Hamas was hiding among civilians, behind civilians, and they are proud, and they showed it. I mean, it's not something that you have to guess about. They are proud that they do it. This is the tactics, the guerrilla tactics. Again, it's not something new that they do. So never before, not in the Second World War, not in the last 2-3 decades, when big terrorist attacks took place and we know the retaliation, nobody was counting how many bombs fell on Germany following attacks on London, on the Blitz. Nobody asked. Nobody asked proportionality in Afghanistan or in Iraq. But when it comes to Israelis, when it comes to Jews, everybody becomes a saint. Maybe that's the position of the Holy Land, so everybody becomes a saint. But not us, the others want to be saints.
And just on the flip side of that as well, again, under a lot of criticism also, we've seen European leaders, whether they are from France or they are from Germany, even from America, the president there, even past presidents like Barack Obama, are speaking very strongly for Israel. What does that mean for Israel?
Oh, it means a lot. You should add President Trudeau to the list.
To
the good list of friends.
Of course, our president,
who was very courageous, smart, and a good friend. And I think that besides the fact that they are all human beings who saw the pictures, they were shown the pictures. So it does not reflect their opinion about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, about a two-state solution. And President Biden was very clear about it, Prime Minister Sunak was very clear about it, and the others, that we are with the Palestinians and the Palestinian rights for a state, but the Hamas, and I'm quoting them, the Hamas does not represent the Palestinians. They're a group of murderers. So this is what brings them together, many of them, also many citizens, I must say, in Europe. The European Parliament, which does not usually lose an opportunity to be very critical with Israel, voted vast majority, supporting Israel. Probably they also understand that when the Hamas, military, extreme religious fundamentalist, speaks about the Waqf, the Holy Land, the Waqf for them is not only Palestine or Israel. Southern Europe is also included. And as they say, after Saturday comes Sunday. So with an influx of so many refugees to Europe in the last few decades, nobody knows how many ISIS cells dormant there are. And ISIS and Hamas and Al Qaeda are all one big group. And I want to show you maybe this, which was found on the body of one of the terrorists, a manual of how to carry the attack, written by Al Qaeda. Or another one, which I will not look for it now, a flag of ISIS that they were carrying with them. So it says ISIS, Al Qaeda. And now Al Qaeda was one day in Afghanistan, next day they were here in Somalia.
And we'll talk
a
about
week later here in
we'll talk about
Nairobi.
that because the moment you mention Al Qaeda and ISIS, then it means that what's happening may not be so far out. It's something that we also here need to be alert about. We'll take a short break. Viewer, we are talking to His Excellency Michael Lawton, who is the ambassador of Israel to Kenya. And we are setting right just the situation, asking the questions that we need to clarify exactly what's going on. Thank you again for being part of this conversation. We're taking a short break. We'll be right back.
Kama vile mashua baharini, mizani imekwisha wasili. Mara hii kila Alhamisi.
Sadaka kabisa, mpenzi mtazamaji, mpenzi msikilizaji wa Mizani.
Tungependa Wakenya waende kwenye nchi ambazo tuko na mikataba nao.
Kulikuwa na Raila Odinga, kukawa na Wajakoya pia. Mbona hongeunga mkono?
Tuwape mauzani wa masuala ibuka na chupukayo toka kila pembe ya Kenya na ukanda huu wa Afrika. Yawe mambo au vijimambo, jiongea na kutaarifu na kuarifu zako fikra. Kila Alhamisi saa 1 machweo kwenye runinga ya Hope TV.
Mitamu.
Tukutane Mizani.
I've actually been trying to find a balance. It's been really tough and hectic, but everyone says once you get a hang of it, it becomes better, and I don't know, but I'm hoping to find a balance soon because it's really been hectic. But you've been in the job industry for a long time, so I think you would know better. Sindio?
Huh? What time is it? I need to catch up on Leadership Forum. Did they have a radio here? Never mind. I brought my own.
No way. You can't be serious. Wait, why do you have a radio and you can just catch up with the shows on Hope FM podcasts?
Really? Even Meet of the One?
I mean, you can find them on whatever platform, name it. AfriPods, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it.
But I'm not subscribed on any of them.
So no worries. You can just check out the latest episodes on hopemediakenya.org.
You can now listen to select Hope FM programs on your favorite podcast streaming platform or directly on our website, www.hopemediakenya.org. Listen and live.
Viewer, welcome back. We are talking about the situation in Israel and guiding us in answering these questions and clarifying exactly what's going on is His Excellency Michael Lawton, the ambassador of Israel to Kenya. And thanks again for your continuous engagement and for just the responses that this program is really bringing enlightenment to us. Just before we went for the break, we're talking about allies, and you smiled to know that Kenya is an ally, is a friend to Israel, and maybe just to comment about that, how you feel about the Kenyan position, towards Israel at this particular point.
Well, you know, there are two issues here. First is not about feeling, but about reading the statements and listening to what leaders, what the president says, what Minister of Foreign Affairs says. And it's encouraging to hear. It was very encouraging to hear the strong condemnation of Hamas terrorist attack immediately on the first day. Unfortunately, not many countries in Africa followed. There were 4 or 5 of them. We expected more from the leaders in Africa, I can tell you. So it's interesting, I think, that many in Africa, people are very supportive of Israel, but we didn't see it, it was not reflected in positions of the leaders. And as you said before, the break, many in Europe, many leaders in Europe support us very strongly. Just today, Austrian Chancellor said to the head of our opposition parties, Mr. Lapid, that if someone will talk in Austria about a rule from the sea to the river, meaning from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River, instead of Israel, that is a criminal offense in Austria. Other countries in Europe said very strictly and clearly that Hamas supporters, if they demonstrate, that will be outlawed. Hamas is defined as a terrorist organization in most of the European countries, and of course in the US.
All right. Historically, Iran has always had a very hard position against Israel. And we also now have picked up that Hezbollah is coming out of Lebanon and joining up with Hamas in attacking Israel. Can you comment about that?
So Iran, after the revolution, after the revolution of the Ayatollahs in 1979, because before, Iran and Israel were good friends, were in very good terms. Iran was exporting part of its oil through Israel. It was a secular regime. With the takeover of the Ayatollahs and the extreme religious regime and ideology, and the very basic position Iran has, and they say it whenever you give them a chance, eliminate Israel, and they talk about it, and they try to do it in different ways by building nuclear capabilities, which we and most of the world tries to block, by building long-range missiles, by supporting and not supporting, launching, building, launching, equipping, financing terrorist organizations. Hezbollah is a big one in Lebanon, but make no mistake, not only there, there are Houthis in Yemen, who last week shot 16 cruise missiles towards Israel. They were shot down by the American fleet. Hamas, which is again operated by and supported by Iran, and you would say, why on earth a Hamas Sunni organization and Iran Shiite? No problem. When it comes to killing, murdering, they cooperate very nicely. Shiites, Sunnis, as long as they are extremists, and we have to remember these are the extreme Shiites, extreme Sunnis. One of my previous postings, or 2 of them, was one ambassador in Kazakhstan. They are Sunnis, very moderate, good allied to Israel, and then Azerbaijan, mostly Shiites, very good friends with Israel. So it's about the extreme terrorist organizations. And Iran is everywhere. And if anybody is doing the mistake of thinking Iran is there, so Iran is here. And here is everywhere. Iran was behind bombing the Israeli embassy in Argentina 20 years ago, or 30 years ago almost. So the fingers of Iran are everywhere.
And when you listen to some of the descriptions and analysis coming out of different institutions in the world. Some of them are saying that if the situation right now is not taken care of, it can escalate to something bigger. And we've had voices from Russia, for instance, and so the question is, what's Israel doing at this present time to tame or arrest this situation? It's a complex situation, but what's Israel doing right now to bring it to control?
To begin with, we don't escalate it. In the last 2 weeks, there were many attempts by Hezbollah to cross the fence with terrorist cells, usually 2-3 people, to take over again a civilian kibbutz or another target in the north. 41 Hezbollah terrorists were shot dead during this more than 2 weeks, but we try to contain the reaction to exactly the same, to the source of the fire. If it's fire that is shot at us, and there were 6 Israelis killed by now in the north, 1 civilian and soldiers from anti-tank rockets. So we hit back, we don't escalate. And we say that we don't have the intention to escalate. And as you heard, President Biden was very, very clear to Iran, talking to Hezbollah, and Iran is the same, telling them, don't escalate. So this is what we do. In any other period of time, for such attempts by Hezbollah, the reaction would have been much, much bigger.
Mm-hmm. And this is for this situation, and of course it's for the sake of peace in the world that we would definitely want this situation to be contained, because no one in the world would want an escalation of the situation. But then historically, the issue between Israel and Palestine, there has been lots of negotiations over the years. And one of the, what you can call like grand solutions is the two-state solution. Maybe you can comment about that, where that stands right now, and maybe some other possible scenarios to bring this situation of Israel, Palestine to a fair close.
Well, the nearest we got to an agreement was in 2000, in the summer of the year of 2000, when the then Prime Minister Barak and Arafat, chairman of the Palestinian Authority, president of the Palestinian Authority, met in Camp David, locked there in Camp David with President Clinton, and what Barak offered was almost the whole cake, 95% of the cake, 95% of the territory, 100% of the population, and a swap of land to give them the feeling that by square kilometers they got the whole cake. But they rejected it, and they launched the second intifada, the second uprising. And as one of our previous Prime Minister, Golda Meir, said, the Palestinians don't miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. You know, if you go back to 1947, the State of Israel was was legalized by a UN resolution, which mentioned 2 states, Palestinian state and a Jewish state. So there was such a solution. But what followed is the attack by all Arab countries, plus the Palestinians on Israel. So there was a 2-state solution, was there. Jerusalem was not even under Israeli rule according to this partition resolution. And then we were attacked over and over again until 1977, when President Sadat of Egypt understood that that's not the way, you can't kick us out. So the easiest, throw the ball to our court. There are peace movements in Israel. There are parties, left-wing parties, that demonstrate against the government, calling for a two-state solution, calling for a dialogue, negotiations. I haven't seen any such demonstrations in the Palestinian Authority, none whatsoever. So if the Palestinian Authority really wants to negotiate, it's not by going to the CNN, BBC, or anybody else and moaning and saying this Israelis, and come and put an offer on the table. You can go back to the history books and see, not long-term history, and see so many offers that were brought by proposals that were brought by Americans and were rejected. The same as the European Union came to the Hamas in 2007 and offered them, put down your weapon, tear down your covenant, we will help you to develop, we will assist Gaza to become Singapore of the Middle East. But they have this rejectionist tendency of saying no, and then cry and moan and go nowhere.
So, from your perspective, do you see this situation of the tension between the Palestinians and Israel extending for longer, indefinitely, or do we see some hope in the horizon? What would you say?
I don't believe that indefinitely exists in conflict, because I'm sure that people that were in the midst of conflicts, in past conflicts, different centuries, thought that it will never end, and it does end. Unfortunately, it's a matter of how many blood is shed and what leadership you have. Because again, the leaders, the Israeli leaders that brought the major change in politics towards the Arab world, towards the Palestinians, come from the right-wing parties, come with military background. If it's Menachem Begin, the right-wing leader in the 70s, if it's Rabin, a military man, general all his life, if it's Sharon, so all of them were on the right. Barak also, the commander of a best commando unit, and then the chief of the defense forces, and he also was the most dovish dov when it came to negotiating. So you need leadership. Leaders need to lead, not be led. And the Palestinians are not at that point, unfortunately.
So we keep hoping that there will be leadership from within Israel, Palestinians around the world that can quicken a solution. And there has always been, again, a consistent pattern where there is expressed hatred for the Jews, anti-Semitism. It's kind of historically recorded. But at the same time, Ambassador, somehow Israel has managed to maintain a position of significance in the world. How do you negotiate that? How would you explain that negotiation? There's apparent hatred, but at the same time, the significance of Israel has remained as a small country in the world.
They go in parallel. Anti-Semitism, which brought also the Holocaust 8 years ago, ended up with the re-establishment of the State of Israel. And what we did is what the Palestinians don't do. We didn't look backwards. We didn't come complaining to all those who, to the anti-Semites, engaging with them. We engaged with ourselves, building our own society, building our own economy, our own education, high-tech, literature, everything. So we did it our own way, probably quite a successful one. And yes, there is anti-Semitism, which was augmented through the centuries. Anti-Semitism took different manifestations. Nowadays, it's mainly coupled with anti-Israeli politics, which is sustained again by many fundamental Muslims. And it's not easy for me to say it because I don't put Muslims as a group. I told you I served in Muslim countries. Myself, I was born in Haifa, which is a mixed city, Jews and Arabs. When I was a child, most of the Arabs in Haifa were Christians. Most of the Arab Christians left Israel, not because of the Israelis, because of the Muslims, the same as in Bethlehem. So I'm very cautious. I don't want to put them as a group, but there are too many that are extreme, and they feed the fire of anti-Semitism in Europe. So sometimes it takes the shape, or they hide behind the anti-Israeli. But you scratch a bit the surface, very quickly you get to anti-Semitism.
And again, coming home to Kenya here, you mentioned earlier Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and when you look at Hezbollah, and there's an underlying connectivity towards this. And so Kenyans may feel like this is far away from them. But how would you connect our situation here, especially with extremist groups which attack the nation? How can you connect what's happening in our region here and what's going on in Israel?
I will not go into analyzing Kenya's security or internal politics, obviously, but what I will tell you is that we know through the decades there is a very strong bond and connection between terrorist cells all over. It took us some time, I remember in the 70s, to understand why on earth the PLO, the Japanese Red Army, Baader-Meinhof in Germany, and the IRA, what do they have in common? So sometimes they had Gaddafi in common, but they always find something because their business is killing. And you exchange knowledge, you transfer money, you learn tactics. Tunnels were not invented in Gaza, at least to the best of my knowledge, and humbly I say it, you had tunnels in Afghanistan, you have tunnels in Somalia, and you have tunnels in Israel, in Gaza. The same with the weapon they use, the explosive they use. It's all over, and it makes sense. I mean, we keep on saying connectivity, how everybody is connected to everybody worldwide. So why on earth would we assume that they are not connected? Or maybe they are connected in a parallel world, this black net and something that we don't see immediately. But they are not less connected. They are much more connected.
All right. And finally, Ambassador, Kenyans pray a lot to the God of Israel. If you listen to most of our prayers, we talk about the God of Israel. And the God of Israel is the refuge of many. You'll hear lots of that. You know, God of Israel, come and help us. The God of Israel is our God. You know, we go ahead to just use the scriptures and say the God of Abraham, Isaac, you know, Joseph is also our God. At this particular point, Ambassador Michael, where do you feel the God of Israel is concerning the present Israel situation?
God is with us. And this gives us the strength to wake up on October the 8th and decide that we go on, and we do. I was talking today with a lady whose two parents, adopting parents, were kidnapped. They are in their 80s. They were kidnapped to Gaza. And she told me about from one of the kibbutzim, and she told me about another. He is 80 years old, who was not kidnapped, thanks God. And he sits in a town in the north, and he says, I want to go back. I want to go back to my kibbutz to start rebuilding it. And you know, it's still a military zone, you can't enter it. So this is the strength that we have with this God that gives us this strength, because living in our neighborhood, it's not easy.
All right. Ambassador Michael, thank you for your perspectives on Spotlight, and our viewers have really appreciated the light that you have shared on these difficult questions, sensitive matter, and it's very clear that a lot of people in Kenya are praying for the peace of Jerusalem, because we know that in the peace of Jerusalem is also the solution also for the Palestinian question. Thank you very much for being on Spotlight. Welcome back again.
Thank you very much. And your prayers help us and support us a lot.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Viewer, we've been talking to His Excellency Michael Lortem, and thank you very much for your engagement. And as we have said, lots of prayers going out for Israel for this present time and also for the future, and also praying for wisdom that as the Palestinian question is engaged, that in the peace of Jerusalem, there shall also be an answer to the Palestinian question. This has been Spotlight. Thank you for watching.